Ellen Barber. Somewhere I read that the purpose of schools was not so much to teach reading as it was to develop taste. Miss Barber did both. After a year with her, I could tolerate the mush and custard books referred to by Juanita Brooks in her biography. The mush and custard books. Just don't read mush and custard books. Miss Barber was recovering from the death of her fiancé from the flu during one of those early epidemics. Nevertheless, she was pleasant, soft-spoken, and some way I can't explain, was able to capture the interest of all of us who had so little experience with great books. To enjoy Paradise Lost and other selections in our Brown English Literature book. I still have my copy. I owe much to her in helping me form a taste for good poetry and fine writing. And before the year was over, Miss Barber was often part of our group of friends for social events. The boys would pick her up when we drove off to a picnic somewhere, or even a trip over to Newton, or else she drove her little car over to be with us. When we were together, she always maintained her dignity as an older person and our teacher. She never acted like one of the young people. George S. Bates. Mr. Bates taught history and I was in the class, and one day he asked me if I was interested in debating and to try out for the team. I did. For a good part of the school year, we were in a little group with Mr. Bates discussing debating procedures and techniques and subject matter of the questions we were to debate, which were selected by a state committee. It was an invaluable experience as I learned how to do research, follow leads, take notes, etc. Thus, doing research on almost any subject that interests me is one of my very favorite sports. I was assigned to the negative team with Evan B. Murray, debating a state constabulary force the first year, and taxing the population to build state roads the second year, and whether we should or whether we shouldn't. Mr. Bates taught us always to agree with our adversaries quickly, then explore alternative means of funding or some strategy. I thought the negative side of the question was more interesting, and we always won, due to my capable partner. We debated at our own school, at North Cache High School, at Logan High School, and at Box Elder High School in Brigham City. After preparing for the dates, I had the problem of clothes. I just about had one school dress and one best dress with a few variations, and I had one pair of shoes. One day, coming from school in the rain, my shoes were soaked and they were made of leather. I put them up close to the little oven of the making stove, and in the morning they were baked, my shoes. When I tried to flex the soles a little bit, they broke right in two. So I had no more shoes to wear. Verda went running down to Artist's place to see if I could borrow some of her shoes. We could. They were fine, but I had to stuff newspapers inside because they were much too big for me. So I filled up the gaps with crumpled up newspapers. And Annie had already loaned me a coat. We stayed close to the Bates family over the years, and we asked him to speak at Mama's funeral in 1952. He moved to Logan High School as principal, where Ted taught math for him for 1 year, taught math for him in the high school for 1 year before we moved to Salt Lake City. E. Ray Gardner. Because of the high value placed by the church on education very early in the colonization of Utah and some surrounding states, the church established junior colleges and academies. Gradually, as the state took over the public education by taxation, the church faded out the academies and colleges in favor of a seminary system in connection with high schools, and later on, institutes near most major universities. The first seminary north of Box Elder County was established at our high school the year we arrived there. The building under construction would be finished that year, and the principal and only teacher was E. Ray Gardner, a teacher par excellence. He brought with him not only a good understanding of the gospel, its history and doctrine, but an enthusiasm and a sparkle, and we responded. His wife was an ex-speech teacher. They soon become very popular with the students and in the community. I think as students we were all looking for spiritual roots. We all had been born in the church, but looking back I feel there was a good deal of apathy in the church, and especially in the small outlying wards. We enjoyed the activities, the music, the dances, the celebrations, but church scholarship was lagging along. Mr. Gardner's enthusiasm for the church and its principles and doctrine was just what we needed. He was all for seeing us have a good time as well. The second year we were there, he announced tryouts for a 3-act drama to be taken around to the various wards in the seminary district. This was one effort to publicize the seminary and encourage participation. Sister Gardner would direct it. I did not try out. I knew my limitations, but Mr. Gardner asked me to act as prompter. This meant being at all rehearsals, traveling with the cast to the various wards. It took too much time, but it was good for my social life. We traveled mostly by private cars for these performances, but a heavy snowstorm made it necessary to travel up to Paradise and over to Newton by sleigh for an overnight stay. These sleighs were wagon boxes transferred to sleigh runners for winter, often with a set of bells on the harness. Sleigh riding was a favorite sport in the country, especially on moonlight nights. At Newton, Mama had cooked a chicken dinner for all of us after the show, and then we bedded down the girls and the boys went up to Uncle Joe's place. Uncle Joe was always eager for his boys to have all kinds of experiences to keep them busy, and he had them take up taxidermy at one time. They had a nice specimen of a stuffed skunk with his front paws up on a willow branch near its head. Sometime in the night, after the boys were sound asleep, one of the Larson boys put that skunk on a little table right near Jimmy James' head. In the morning, Mr. Gardner called the boys early so we could get back in good time. With a scream and a scramble, those boys were out of bed in a hurry, much to the noisy amusement of Mr. Gardner and the Larson brothers watching in the wings. Our first year at South Coast was drawing to a close. The year had been a success on all fronts. The morale at the school was high, and efforts were made that spring to publicize the school at various activities in the wards and communities with potential students. We were sent to talk in sacrament meetings in several wards, and the seminary play and the school opera, Erminy, had been seen by a large part of the population, and the Dowdle girls arrived home unscathed and enthusiastic. I had been elected vice president of the student body for the next year, and Verda was dating the student body president. When I counted heads in the September of 1922, the beginning of the next school year, there were 12 Newton High School students in Hiram. I also counted the mothers who would stop short of sending their children off alone, and they came with them. As I look back on this experience, I feel that our lives in Hiram was only an extension of our lives at home with the family. The main difference was that Papa wasn't there to make a fire for us on cold winter mornings, and Mama to have a hot breakfast for us. There was never a question about our going to a dance because our parents felt that that was an important experience. We were busy at school. We had friends who came from homes much like our own, and we were often in those homes, especially the Hammond home in Providence and the Wyatt home in Wellsville. We sensed the concern and the interest of the people in the Third Ward in Hiram, extending their friendship and encouraging our participation in ward activities. We were never ignored. And then Mama's arm just had to be extended across the valley. Mama's arm had to be extended across the valley to continue to help us out. She began collecting cardboard boxes for mailing everything from our laundry to cooked food. I only remember calling home once by telephone. I simply had to tell them that we'd won our first debate. After all, it cost 15 cents, and I had to make sure that I had it in my pocket before I made the call. We had all been given responsibilities as we grew up, but it was a supervised responsibility. Now we were on our own to make decisions, to take responsibility without any recourse to anyone. This seemed to come as naturally to us as preparing our own meals and making our own fires. My senior year were busy. We were debating again. I had heavy responsibilities in student government. We were active in church and tried to support a not too successful athletic program at the high school. All of this in the margins of time as we tried to keep up with our classwork. The County Board of Education built an extensive addition to the school building that year, including an assembly hall and gymnasium. It was completed and occupied in the spring, and the student officers were involved in all activities connected with the public tours of the building and the dedication activities. By spring, we were involved in preparing to graduate. We also had word that a seminary graduation would be held, even though our seminary had only been in operation 2 years, and the minimum for graduation was 3 years of classes. There were 5 of us who qualified. A couple of weeks before the event, Mr. Gardner informed me that I was to give the valedictory address and that I was to meet Mr. Noon, another teacher who had been added, would help me prepare my talk. I was a little surprised at this, but I did as I was told. In those several sessions, Mr. Noon paced the floor as he dictated to me what I should say and told me to go home and memorize it and then go back to Sister Gardner, who would coach me in my delivery. No one would ever know my growing disappointment in this whole thing. I felt like a machine that was being wound up. It was not my expression. It would not be my testimony. And this is what seminary had meant to me. I somehow felt diminished, but I made no protest. I just saw that as far as I was concerned, everything went as planned. Mama came over with a new dress Auntie had made for me, and to help us wind things up for the year. For the seminary exercises, Papa came over with the Newton bishopric. The Third Ward Chapel was filled to its capacity for this first graduation of the Hiram State Seminary, and all went well. I knew Papa was proud when he hugged me. He had never done that. The next week, I graduated from high school. The exercises were the first to be held in the new edition. Papa came over again, this time in a white top buggy, so he could move us home. Our stove and the couch was moved down to Bishop James Christensen's home, where LeVar, Ed Larson, Verda, and I would live next year, and I would commute to Brigham Young College in the electric trains to prepare to become a teacher. Ready? This is a picture of the Brigham Young campus, Brigham Young College campus in Logan, that I left. I have another picture, smaller, that was taken years later when the trees are grown up a little higher. It was a beautiful campus, and the buildings were beautiful. And I also have a picture of the high school at South Cache High School, where we left this campus and went. But I haven't found it, so we'll leave a space on the tape so we can insert that picture, and also a picture after the addition was built of